Hello and welcome back to another KCC video. I'm Rob and today we'll be jumping into I Don't Work Here Lady. Our first story today comes to us from Odontoblastoise. I'm not the lab tech. I've never drawn your blood. But come to think of it, you have given me a urine sample before. Let's jump right in. I have one more I Don't Work Here Lady story. Not as cute as the Disneyland one, but hopefully as entertaining. I work as a dentist in a really small rural town about an hour outside of our mid-sized city of about 250,000 people. Because I'm one of the only dentists in town and because I'm the only one that will do more complicated extractions and root canals, I dress in surgical scrubs every day. I got tired of laundering bloodstains out of dress shirts and white lab jackets. A few years ago, I was diagnosed with AFib. I visit my cardiologist about every 6 months just to keep him in business. This last time, as I was checking in at his front desk at the hospital for my appointment, I apparently offended the giant lady behind me by having to update my insurance information and address with the nice lady behind the desk. I was midway through giving nice lady my new address when giant lady taps me aggressively on the shoulder. "Can't you guys talk on your lunch break or something? I've got another appointment after this." Immediately, I turn on my impassive, expressionless face I use with my own agitated patients. Rather than responding immediately, I finished giving my information to nice lady. When I was done, I turned to face giant lady, who was not pleased with my delayed response. I am not a small man. The word husky has been thrown around a time or two, but I felt small standing there with her glaring down at me. "I think you've confused the situation here, ma'am. I'm a patient checking in for my appointment. As soon as nice lady is done with me, I'll go sit down and you can check in." I thought I was polite, but I think nice lady was smirking or grinning behind me because giant lady just about had an aneurysm on the spot. "I've been coming here for 6 years, she screeched. I just stared at her evenly. "I know you've drawn my blood before." I just kept staring blankly for a moment, then said, "No, I haven't. I'm a dentist." And at that moment, I remembered her. She had been an emergency patient I had seen one time, only for a toothache years before when I worked in a practice here in town. It had been a catastrophic visit, and she never came back. She remembered me at the same moment, and she saw in my expression that I remembered her. "Oh yeah," was all she said, and stepped back. I quickly wrapped up my business with nice lady and meekly sat in a chair. Giant lady eventually made her way into the waiting room and sat with her back resolutely towards me until I was called back by the nurse. I went through my cardiology checkup and had forgotten about giant lady by the time I was done. As I went to leave, I waved at nice lady on my way out. Pro tip, always be extra polite and kind to the office support staff. They have way more influence over your provider's attitude towards you than you realize. How you treat them can influence how your doctor treats you. Nice lady waved me over before I left and told me in a quiet voice that I was the first person to ever shut giant lady down mid-attack. I guess giant lady is in there at least monthly, and she is always rude and demanding, and most people being intimidated by her size just defer and let her have her way. I just smiled and said, guess I'm just lucky." She smiled and I walked off. I am not lucky. What I couldn't say because of HIPAA, American law governing the sharing of personal health information, is that when giant lady was my patient for exactly one visit, I had pulled a really loose infected tooth for her. After the really simple extraction, as I was placing some gauze over the bleeding hole in her skull and telling her to relax in the chair and not stand up too fast if she felt lightheaded, she did exactly that. She stood straight up immediately, swayed, and passed out, crashing headfirst over the chair into the tray of used instruments. The chair completely gave out and collapsed, screaming and groaning to the floor. I swear to God, it screamed as it died. Giant lady released her bladder in her collapse, and the reek of urine literally made my assistant retch. We spent the next few hurried minutes getting her revived and on oxygen. I'm not a small guy, as I've said, but we could not physically move her. And once she was down, apparently, she could not physically move herself either. She had to lay there over our twisted chair, breathing on oxygen, cursing, bleeding from her mouth, in a pool of her own urine for a solid 15 minutes until 6 burly EMS guys could squeeze into our little overcrowded operatory to hoist her up and escort her out to the ambulance. She was not pleased. She apparently recovered and lived to make the lives of other healthcare workers full of interest and entertainment. The chair, however, did not recover, had to be replaced. I've seen her one other time since then in the far-off distance of Walmart putting along laboriously on a motorized cart. I guess the moral of the story is that if you're going to aggressively mistake someone as a lazy employee of your doctor, make sure first that he's not someone you already know from an extremely embarrassing prior encounter. I wonder if the office charged the lady for destroying the chair. I mean, the chair went in such a horrendous way. She did exactly what she was told not to do. I'd definitely send her a bill. Do me a quick favor, have a look down below the video. If that subscribe button's still red, it means you're not actually subscribed to the KCC channel. Please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. Our second story today comes to us from Niji Koneko. I don't work here, but I wish I did. Laugh out loud. Let's jump right in. About 20 minutes ago, I'm in Sephora. I've gotten an email with a discount code and figured I'd treat myself to some new makeup for being an adult and getting my vaccine, as well as replacing the rotors on my car. So I'm browsing the eyeshadow looking for a palette I want but don't already have. I'm wearing a tie-dye tank top, tie-dye bandana in my hair, and a pair of paint-stained jeans from when I helped paint my dad's fence a few days ago. So unless there's some sort of casual Wednesday I'm unaware of, I certainly don't look like an employee. Due to the pandemic, you can't test the makeup like normal. This isn't a problem for me. I know what brands I like and work well for me, but apparently Karen has a huge problem with this because the next thing I know, there's a tap on my shoulder, so I turn around. I'm face to face with what I can best describe as Mimi from the Drew Carey Show 2.0. Her face had so much makeup caked onto it, I could see where she applied different shade concealers very clearly, almost like lines on her face. Her eyes were more done up than a fashion couture model during Fashion Week, but were smeared like she had just got done a 4-hour crying session. I want to try that one, as she pointed at a colorful palette. I bet you do. What's that supposed to mean? She said with a sneer. It looks like your eyeshadow could use a touch-up, I replied with a shrug. How dare you insult me? I'll have your job. She even kinda stomped as she said this, like an angry rhinoceros. Good luck with that, but if this is how you treat employees, I'm glad you got me instead. They don't get paid enough to put up with your BS. For whatever reason, she's still not convinced that I don't work there, and she stomps off to find a manager, still shrieking about disrespect and how she's never and blah blah. I figure the manager will take it and go back to looking at the palettes. Not so lucky. About a minute later, she comes huffing back, manager in tow, looking like a poor pup who had just been beat. That one, she screams while pointing at me. That's the one who insulted me, and I demand you do something about it right now. She cried, again stomping her feet on the last 2 syllables. The manager looks at me, looks at Mimi, shakes her head and says, "Ma'am, she clearly doesn't work here. She's a customer just like you. I'm not sure what you want me to do. I'm sorry if she upset you, but unless she put her hands on you or threatened you, there's not much I can do." Realization slowly washed over the woman and her face went from being red like a cherry, from being angry, to being pink like bubblegum from being embarrassed. She stuttered out half an apology. "Oh, I'm so, yeah," then said to the manager, "Well, I still want to try that palette." At this point, my mind was made up. There was only one of those palettes left on the floor, and while they might have had more in the back, she was going to wait for it. Without a word, I grabbed the palette and started walking towards the line. Mimi nearly starts crying at this point. "Did you see that? Can she do that? I wanted that palette." The manager simply responded, "Ma'am, you asked to sample that palette, and unfortunately right now due to the pandemic, I can't let you do that." As I've already stated, she is a customer, and if she wants to buy that palette, she is absolutely allowed. If you're going to keep causing a scene, I'm going to need to ask you to leave. Mimi turned on her heels and went to sulk in the corner of the store. I checked out and have been sitting in my car waiting for her to leave the store so I can go back and return this hideous palette. Screw her. OP added an update to this story. It says, "Update, She finally left the store, no bag in hand. I waited for her to exit the parking lot to ensure she didn't see me going back in. When I walked back in the door, the employee watching the door started cracking up. I asked what had happened with Mimi 2.0. Apparently, she was so irate that I took the last one, she asked to buy the sample. They couldn't let her do that. She then insisted that an employee go check the back and not come out until they've looked everywhere for another one. So they sent an employee in the back, read smoke break, to look for nearly 20 minutes. I imagine that the employee had multiple smokes, and after dealing with this lady, I don't blame her. The employee came back and told her they looked everywhere, but they don't have any more. At this point, Mimi picked up the pallet closest to her and threw it on the ground in protest. The manager told her she would be paying for it and leaving the premises immediately, and if she didn't, they'd be calling the cops. Mimi forked over the money and hustled her ample behind out of the store. At this point, I said, man, in that case, I'm glad I waited to see her leave the parking lot before I came to return this. And the employee doubled over with laughter. She thought I was just checking up on the situation. She had no idea I didn't actually want that pallet. Generally, I'm one of the nicest people you'll ever meet, but disrespecting an employee who is just trying to do their job is one surefire way to piss me off, and I have no problem standing up for the person who most likely can't or chance losing their job. Did anybody else get to the point where OP was waiting in their car to return the item and burst out laughing? That was epic. At that point, you know it was purchased just out of spite, and OP is a wonderful person. Our last story today comes to us from Ligamentary. My 7-year-old daughter makes her first sale. Let's jump right in. My, at the time, 7-year-old daughter loved to help with every little household task. She loved drying the dishes, watering the plants, sorting the mail, even answering the phone. So whenever I'd have to take her to work with me or out on a boring errand, I'd try and find some small job for her to do to keep her occupied and feeling a valued part of things. For example, if we were at the grocery store, I might suggest she helps the clerks by turning all the cans so their labels faced right side out, etc. And what was really helpful is that it allowed me to finish up in the tasks much more quickly. So when I picked her up from school one day, I had to run to a home goods department store and grab a few things for an urgent repair. She was getting restless, so I parked her in the plumbing department and said she could be helpful to the store by going through their big row of pipes and returning the mismatched ones to their proper holders. Her dad's a plumber, so she knew all about which ones went where. Off I went to finish up a few paces over. I was occupied for all of 10 minutes and periodically peeked over to see how she was getting by. She'd moved on from the pipes after a bit, but was checking out other products and seemed entertained enough. So I take a couple minutes more and all of a sudden I hear, "Associate to aisle 14, please. We need an associate in aisle 14. A young, chipper, 7-year-old voice. I dash back to the plumbing section and she's nowhere to be found. Then I hear, "It seems we have a birthday in the store. Happy birthday to shopper Nicholas Manikowski." In her unmistakably enthused twang, she took on when talking about something as exciting to her as birthdays. It was the most enthusiastic announcement this big box store probably ever had. It brought on some clapping and whooping from shoppers that made it hard to discern the location of the box, but I could just barely pick out where the PA was coming from. By the time I got there, my daughter was engrossed in conversation with a young couple, not young like 7, young like 25, and was gesturing animatedly at a set of sink fixtures. I thought maybe she was asking them for directions to where I might be shopping or something, but instead I hear, "Oh yeah, you'll want the chrome extender, you'll never sweat the dishes again, and it's such a centerpiece in the room. This store also offers extenders in copper and..." I tapped her on the shoulder, unsure of why she was chatting up these shoppers about faucet add-ons, figuring she'd be relieved to see I found her. Instead, she whips around and goes, "Excuse me mom, I'm with a customer," and turns right back to her discussion. So I throw up my hands and just hover in the background, waiting to see how this all shakes out. Because if I already knew anything about my daughter, it's that when she's decided to do something, it's happening one way or another. So she continues talking to these two morons unfazed by her age about the sink, answering their questions and making suggestions. At first, I was flabbergasted by the fluidity at which she was generating these seemingly accurate responses, and wondering if she was sitting up at night watching the Home Improvement channel or something, but I soon recognized the lines. She was parroting her father's sales pitches from work, with some of her own editorials mixed in. He advises people on fixtures all the time, and his firm got a kickback if he would convince clients to buy from their supplier. The more add-ons the better, so she was laying it on thick. The couple left, agreeing to purchase a whole new sink. If I didn't have to rush out to get another child from daycare, I would have badgered the store for a commission check. When my daughter wrapped up with her customers, I asked her what all had just happened. She explained, while she was sorting the pipes, people kept coming up and asking her for advice. I guess I looked smart. It took me a minute to figure out what had happened, because plenty of people who are actually of age to work in the place have been kneeling down rifling through the pipes, and they aren't mistaken for workers. I've certainly never been. It wasn't until checkout that it hit me. On this particular day, her class had gone on a field trip or put on a presentation day or something, in which all of the children had to wear official name tags the teacher had drawn up for them. She was especially proud of hers and kept it right in the middle of her shirt. It was indistinguishable from the ones the employees had on their vests. Just a standard red and white, "Hello, my name is blank." People were on such autopilot that they didn't process her age, or were so impressed by her unprecedented knowledge of plumbing goods that they set it aside. She confirmed that she knew exactly what to recommend from going to work with Dad. I asked how she ended up manning the PA system, and she explained another employee who'd seen her helping the store customers realized how helpful she could be, so asked her to make an announcement. Just like I'd asked her to help sort those pipes, and she was happy to lend a hand. I asked how she knew how to operate a PA system, and to my chagrin, she explained her older sister jumped on the PA system whenever she and her friends came by the department store. She often babysat and ran errands for me, so that was a good data point to have. And she added that someone she'd helped with the fixture decision had mentioned how he was remodeling his house for a 50th birthday present to himself, and she always loves when the bowling alley announces birthdays. So she wanted to try and get the practice started everywhere with the capacity for announcements. And wasn't that a great idea? So she most certainly did not work there, but she was just as helpful as those who did, and I guarantee she had twice as much fun. Okay, so if I saw a kid with a name tag on who was helping to organize the store, I'd think they were there on a work day from school, maybe with their parents, and I'd maybe ask them a question as well, just to make them feel like they fit in. I can only imagine what my response would be though, when I'm expecting a cute kid answer and they come back with more plumbing knowledge than I have in my whole lifetime. Check out the OPs at the links in the description down below. Thanks for watching and have a wonderful day. Bye bye.